Welcome back. Today, we're talking about the moment the manipulator realizes their fundamental error. The moment they grasp that losing you wasn't just a consequence. It was their biggest, most catastrophic mistake. They operated under a set of false assumptions, that your silence signaled weakness, that your patience meant desperation, and that your integrity was easily replaceable. But now, in the profound echo of your absence, the truth has finally arrived, and it's far more devastating than simple loneliness. It's the stark realization of the gravity of what they cast aside. You were the one who appeared when no one else would. You were the rock who stood by them when the situation was at its ugliest. Now, with their world feeling quiet and hollow, they feel the crushing weight of that loss. It absolutely haunts them. Ego often blinds people to true value. They mistake consistency for boredom and deep empathy for naivety. They misread genuine kindness as a lack of options. But reality is a relentless force, and it corrects perception brutally and without mercy. There is immense power in the act of walking away, not driven by vengeance or a storm of anger, but by a quiet, unwavering recognition of your own intrinsic worth. The moment you left, you withdrew the warmth, the support, and the unwavering presence they took for granted. Now they are left in the cold, surrounded by the very emptiness they once imposed on you. They were convinced you'd eventually break. They banked on you begging or returning because they had convinced themselves that you needed them more than they needed you. But you did the unexpected. You chose healing over chaos. You chose peace over drama. And in doing so, you completely disrupted their entire self-serving narrative. They are now left wrestling with the undeniable truth. You weren't the problem. You were the profound blessing they casually squandered. There is something psychologically devastating about realizing you deliberately harmed the one person who would have protected you unconditionally. That awareness doesn't arrive dramatically. Regret isn't loud. It's a quiet poison. It creeps in slowly, waking them up in the dead of night. It plays the sound of your laughter in their head, reminds them that no one looks at them with the acceptance you offered. Their current conversations feel empty, their new connections fail to measure up, and their moments fall flat. All the while, the shadow of what they lost grows longer and darker. When someone loses a person of genuine integrity, someone who loved deeply, forgave readily, and gave without meticulously keeping score, it's not a mere loss. It's a reckoning. It's an internal earthquake. They are forced to live with the knowledge that they had something precious and they destroyed it. They know this destruction wasn't due to a flaw in you, but a flaw in them. They lacked the maturity, the vision, and the character to rise to the level of your depth. Now they are drowning in the shallow consequences of their own choices. You were never meant for the shallow end of the pool. People without depth often panic in deep waters. So when they tried to diminish you, when they pushed you away, or when they ran from the commitment, it wasn't because you were too much. It was because your light exposed their shadow. Your presence revealed their own stark inadequacies. Instead of choosing to grow and meet you, they chose the easier path: retreat. This concept of inner light and integrity is a universal principle of wisdom, reflecting the moral architecture that God has woven into the human spirit. Your integrity was a gift that threatened their constructed reality. Now, you are not waiting around. You are building, growing, and thriving. Every deliberate step forward you take is another unwritten memo to them of the life they sacrificed. Your peace has become your loudest statement. Your silence has become your greatest source of power. Your evolution has become their inescapable mirror, showing them everything they failed to be when they were given the chance. They thought they understood your value, but they only understood your convenience. They measured you by what you did for them, the empathy you provided, the emotional load you carried, the support you offered, all consumed casually, rarely reciprocated, and never fully respected. When you finally stepped away and stopped explaining your worth, the silence was louder than your presence ever was. The ego convinces them that everyone is permanent, that they are the center of the universe, and that you would orbit them regardless of their mistreatment. That was the profound illusion. The truth is, you were the light source. You were the one keeping their world illuminated. And when that light goes out, everything they relied on becomes cold, unfamiliar, and frighteningly hollow. It was always easier for them to downplay your significance than to rise and meet it. They called you too much to avoid confronting their not enough. But once you are gone, there is no buffer between them and that brutal truth. They didn't just lose someone, they lost you, the blessing they squandered. Let them sit with it. Losing you wasn't just a mistake. It was the mistake, the one they will measure every future connection against, the one that taught them, far too late, what genuine loyalty, real presence, and unconditional support truly look like. You were never disposable. You were never too much. You were real in a world that consistently settles for pretense. Now that you're gone, they know it, they feel it, and they will carry it. Not because you sought vengeance, but because life, the natural moral system of consequences, has forced them to taste the bitterness of their own choices. The person they completely underestimated has become the one they can now never forget. The narrative doesn't stop with your departure. We need to examine what happens in the silence that follows. What happens when the noise around them begins to fade? Suddenly, the people they ran to don't feel as warm. The jokes aren't as funny. The comfort isn't as deep. This isn't just absence. It's subconscious comparison. In every shallow interaction, they are measuring it against the profound presence you gave them. And the devastating reality is that what you offered cannot be mimicked. You weren't playing a role. You were being authentic. And authenticity is not a commodity that can be replicated once it's gone. Your absence accomplished what your presence never could. It forced them to reflect. It compelled them to sit with the discomfort of their own destructive choices and to finally feel the vast space you once filled. They realize now, with terrible clarity, that they never truly deserved you. This kind of devastating awareness doesn't arrive in one lightning bolt. It seeps in slowly, in pieces. A melody reminds them of you. A conversation echoes a piece of advice you used to give. A moment of silence brings back your laughter, your encouragement, your steady, unshakable support. And in that moment, they are struck with the terrible weight of understanding. They didn't just lose someone who cared. They lost the one who cared the most. You were never average. You were never replaceable. You were a rare kind of soul. A person who shows up even in hardship, who listens even when exhausted, who gives even when hurting. That kind of presence is rare, and the world is often too arrogant to see it. But time strips away the layers of illusion. It reveals the true, non-negotiable value of what was lost. No one's presence brought them the peace yours did. No one's absence cuts them quite the way yours does. This is the paradox of human nature. We tend to devalue what is freely given and obsessively chase what withholds. You weren't playing games. You were simply honest. Honest with your heart, your time, and your effort. In a world defined by manipulation, your honesty was overwhelming. They rejected it because they couldn't match it. It wasn't that you weren't enough. It was that they weren't equipped to receive something real. But now they see. They see it in the hollow quality of their current relationships. They see it in the quiet moments when there is no one there to truly understand them like you did. You were the one who saw through their performance and their insecurity, and instead of exploiting it, you nurtured them. You believed in them. You stayed even when it cost you pieces of your own soul. Now, without you, they are forced to deal with the damage they caused, not because you demanded it, but because your absence reveals more truth than your words ever could. They know now. They may never utter the apology, but deep inside, they know losing you wasn't a small misstep. It was a catastrophic failure of character, a moment of blindness with consequences that continue to echo. You were the anchor in their chaos, and they let go of that for the illusion of control. Now they drift, unsettled, and unable to find that same internal stability again. And the most powerful part? You didn't retaliate. You didn't demand validation. You simply walked. In doing so, you reclaimed your power. Power isn't always found in confrontation. Sometimes it's found in quiet detachment, in the decision to stop bleeding for those who wouldn't offer you a simple bandage. This regret they feel is not loud. It doesn't arrive with fanfare or rage. It seeps in like water through the cracks of the soul, slow and relentless. That is their punishment. They thought they were making a choice rooted in control, expecting you to chase, beg, or plead. But you didn't. You simply left, and that silence became their greatest tormentor. Regret is the consequence the mind gives itself when the heart finally wakes up to the truth. And the waking up is brutal. The initial false relief they felt has decayed into doubt, into shame, into long nights spent wondering, what have I done? It wasn't just anyone they lost. It was you, the person who gave more than they took, who forgave more than they should have. Once the fog of arrogance clears, the truth stands naked before them. They destroyed the very thing they claimed to want. Regret comes in waves. First, a memory, a scent, a song that stings. Then comes the comparison, conscious or not. Every new interaction becomes a reminder that no one feels like you did. No one sees them with the same depth or stands beside them with the same unwavering loyalty. The truth always returns. You don't need their regret to validate your worth. You have already proven it by being exactly who you are. And now they know losing you was their biggest mistake, and there is no going back from that. Your journey is not one of revenge. It is one of rebirth and God-given sovereignty. The truth they are facing is absolutely brutal. They injured someone who would have protected them unconditionally. They shattered the safest harbor they had. They betrayed the trust of a person who only ever sought to genuinely understand and uplift them. That kind of realization doesn't just sting, it cripples the soul. It forces them to confront not merely the loss, but their unambiguous role in it. They cannot shift the blame. They cannot twist the narrative. Deep down, they know the fault was theirs. Their calculated indifference, their fragile ego, their deafening silence when they should have spoken, and their coldness when you desperately needed warmth. Regret is a mirror that shows the ugliest parts of us. It reflects the traits we justify while we are operating in the chaos, the selfishness, the emotional immaturity, the cowardice. But once you are gone, that mirror doesn't lie. It doesn't entertain excuses. It simply reflects the image of a person who casually discarded something truly extraordinary, and worse, it shows them what they were in that moment: selfish, cowardly, immature. That is the kind of regret that lingers. It's not the regret you cry about once and move on from. It's the shadow that walks behind them, reminding them daily. You let them go, and now you have to live with it. They will attempt to move forward. They will post carefully curated updates, chase new connections, and loudly claim they've evolved. But no transformation built on denial can ever last. Genuine healing requires the courage to face what you have done. And because most lack that courage, they will be perpetually haunted. Haunted by your grace, your patience, the way you refuse to fight for validation, and the profound dignity with which you walked away. Your dignity is what burns them the most. Not your anger, not your words, but your absence. That is the one constant they cannot manipulate, silence, or twist. It is real. It is permanent. People often mistakenly think that closure is a conversation, but sometimes closure is simply silence. Sometimes closure is watching someone realize, all on their own, that they were the undeniable villain in the story they tried desperately to paint themselves into as the victim. That moment, when their false reality collapses, is when the real regret begins. They aren't truly sorry that you left. They are sorry because they now see you never needed them the way they needed you. That truth is what wounds their ego. That is what triggers the spiral, because your strength was not loud. It was quiet, steady, and unshakable. And that kind of strength can never be replaced. It can only be missed. This is the psychological trap of regret. It makes time the enemy. They cannot go back. They cannot unshatter what was broken. And every moment you thrive without them simply confirms the painful truth. It was always them, not you. It confirms that your peace was never dependent on their presence. They lost the one person who would have truly built with them, grown with them, and loved them even at their most unlovable. Regret is not karma, it is consequence. It is the inner courtroom where the mind puts itself on trial, again and again, and the verdict is always the same. Guilty. Guilty of negligence. Guilty of betrayal. Guilty of letting go of someone irreplaceable. And the sentence? A lifetime of knowing that you were the biggest mistake they ever made. You never had to seek revenge or get even. Life took care of it, not with explosive drama, but with quiet, soul-crushing realization. Every time they remember you, they are not just remembering a person. They are remembering the better version of themselves they could have become if they had simply chosen to honor you. You didn't abandon a relationship. You were reclaiming your own narrative. Walking away wasn't a retreat. It was an assertion of your value. It was a declaration that your spirit, your time, and your energy are not mere commodities to be traded for someone else's emotional convenience. They are stuck, and they are haunted. You are free, and you are building. Keep walking, keep growing, and keep living as if they never existed. Because that is the most powerful response of all. We've established that your departure triggered an unstoppable reckoning for them. Now, let's talk about the profound, beautiful work you did in the space you created. For far too long, you defined your entire existence by someone else's expectations. You adapted your personality, your moods, and your ambitions to fit the precise contours of their fragile world. You endured dismissive comments, sustained silent treatments, and endless broken promises, all under the false flag of keeping the peace. But peace built on self-denial is no peace at all. It's a powder keg waiting for the spark. The moment you recognized that toxic truth, you faced a clear choice. Continue the path of self-erasure, or step off and chart your own course. You chose the latter. And in doing so, you didn't find a new person. You rediscovered the person you were before you lost yourself in their suffocating chaos. In that newfound space of solitude, you finally began to hear your own thoughts again. Clear, resonant ideas about what you truly wanted, what you absolutely deserved, and what you were capable of achieving. You reconnected with your sidelined passions. You felt the powerful stirrings of forgotten dreams. As you nurtured those embers, you grew unequivocally stronger. You absorbed the lesson that your identity isn't defined by someone else's fleeting approval, but by the integrity with which you lead your own life. You realized that boundaries aren't defensive walls. They are simply clear signposts that guide others toward the respect you inherently deserve. With every step you took away from their drama, you took a step closer to yourself. You learned this power in the quiet moments of solitude. It was there you finally grasped just how much you had given without receiving. It was in the thrill of conquering new challenges, finishing a project, learning a new skill, that you fully remembered your own innate competence. Your self-esteem began to rise, not because they validated you, but because your own actions did. Every victory became a testament to the fact that your worth was never, ever tied to their presence. They made a catastrophic miscalculation. They believed their absence would break you. They thought letting you go would be a punishment you couldn't recover from. But what they failed to see is that leaving behind toxicity isn't an act of weakness. It's an act of fierce, unyielding self-respect. In the echo of your departure, you didn't collapse. You expanded. You filled the void with proactive growth. You invested the hours you once wasted explaining and justifying yourself into building resilience, honing vital skills, and forging a definitive vision for your future. That vision excluded them, not out of petty revenge, but because you needed to protect the magnificent person you were becoming. As you thrived, their regrets began to stack up. They watched your life from a distance, seeing your genuine laughter with new friends, glimpsing your momentum in your career, and sensing the calm, effortless confidence you carried. Each observation was a blow to their ego, confirming that you were not defined by their approval. Instead, you had become defined by your own internal standards of excellence and authenticity. This reality was a bitter pill for them because it exposed their own deep shortcomings. They wanted you to stay in comfortable mediocrity because mediocrity was all they could match. You discovered that the most enduring relationship you will ever know is the one you have with yourself. It's the one you wake up with and carry to sleep. You learned to speak kindly to your own reflection, to challenge self-doubt, and to celebrate progress rather than punish failure. You learned that self-love isn't selfish. It's the non-negotiable foundation that allows you to love others without ever losing yourself in the process. In that profound, self-authorized realization, you found a freedom they could never have given you. You have mastered the art of reclaiming your self-worth. Now the final step is to make this peace permanent. Would you like to focus on structuring your new life with clear, non-negotiable standards to ensure you only attract relationships that honor your integrity? There is a profound irony in your journey. By losing them, you ultimately gained everything. You gained time to reflect, time to grow, time to finally heal. You gained clarity about your core values, your deepest desires, and the kind of people who truly deserve a place in your life. You gained momentum, the unstoppable force of a life lived intentionally rather than reactively. And most importantly, you gained unwavering self-respect. The kind that doesn't falter simply because someone else failed to recognize your worth. Your journey is the undeniable proof that the right decision is rarely the path of least resistance. It was the hard choice, the one that asked you to face uncertainty, to risk loneliness, and to confront the part of yourself that had been in hiding. But that is precisely how true transformation happens. You didn't just escape a toxic loop. You rewrote the script. You became the protagonist who absolutely refuses to settle for supporting roles. You taught yourself that a life subservient to another's insecurities is a life not worth living. And in doing so, you established an unshakable standard for how you will be treated from this day forward. Let them believe they won. They didn't, because winning isn't about holding on to someone else. It's about holding on to yourself. And now you hold on to yourself more firmly than ever before. You found the part of you that thrives in challenge, that finds joy in self-discovery, and that refuses to compromise on authenticity. Losing them wasn't a loss. It was your profound deliverance. They assumed their betrayals, their selfishness, and their emotional games would simply fade with time. They thought you would be just another name they'd forget. But that's not how it turned out. Because the moment you finally let go, you didn't scream or beg or chase. You stepped into silence, and that silence spoke more than 1,000 arguments ever could. That is when their unraveling began. Slowly, steadily, painfully, they started to feel the true weight of their mistake. They know now, losing you wasn't just a misstep. It was the moment everything started to fall apart. When you lose someone average, life moves on. But when you lose someone real, someone loyal, deeply compassionate, someone who truly meant what they said, there is no replacing that. It's not about filling a space. It's about facing a void, a hollow silence that no one else seems able to fill. You were the one who understood the parts of them they tried to conceal. You gave without keeping score. You loved them with an integrity that terrified people who only knew how to sabotage love. They live with that truth every single day. They try to numb it with distraction, but none of it sticks. Their mind constantly reaches back to you, remembering how you made them feel safe, seen, and accepted. Every new person they encounter is just a painful reminder of what they chose to let go. Regret haunts them with the thought that they had something rare, and they deliberately chose to lose it. They mishandled it. They watched it break and failed to repair it until it was too late. They know now. Every memory is a lesson, and every lesson points to the same conclusion. You were the real one. You were the one who should have been protected, not provoked. This consequence is not mystical karma. It is purely psychological. It is the mind turning inward, putting itself on trial, playing back all the moments they could have said, "I need you," or "Let's fix this." And those moments are now gone, sealed in time, untouchable. The impact of losing you is not just emotional, it is existential. You didn't just offer love. You offered identity. You were the foundational anchor in their story, the stabilizing presence who stayed when they were at their worst. By mistreating you, they weren't just careless with your heart. They were careless with their own foundation. And that wound festers and gnaws at them when the world is quiet and the nights feel cold. They remember everything. The belief in your eyes, the softness in your voice, the way you stood in the fire with them. Not because you had to, but because you chose to. All of that has turned into one bitter, undeniable truth. They didn't deserve you, and they pushed you away. You didn't need revenge. You simply lived your truth. You chose self-respect over chaos. You chose peace over pleading. And that is what they can't unsee. That is what breaks them now. Not your words, but your silence, your composure, and your ability to walk away and never look back. It reminds them every day that the person they lost is the person they will never find again. You are rising now, not with vengeance, but with grace. You are building a life where peace is not a struggle. It is your unshakable standard. You are becoming someone whose presence is not given so easily, because you finally understand what it means to protect your own spirit. They will watch. They will ache. They will observe. Because every step you take forward is a painful reminder of the life they sacrificed. Their biggest mistake wasn't just losing you. It was believing they could lose you and still remain whole. Now they know they are not whole, and they won't be, because losing someone like you That kind of mistake follows you forever.